I wanted to talk about something I haven't really seen the community talk about as much as I would think they would be. And that's this new raid seal philosophy Bungie has taken, where you no longer are required to complete a raid flawlessly as part of the raid seal. Now consider these things. The Last Wish seal requires a flawless completion. The Scourge of the Past seal required a flawless completion. The Crown of Sorrows seal required a flawless completion. But ever since the season after Undying, the raid seals no longer require a flawless raid completion. That's right, after the Undying season, the Garden of Salvation seal no longer required a flawless completion. A flawless raid is the epitome of the understanding a raid fully. Also, I need to make this point. Clan Night is required for all the raid seals, which is typically accomplished by players all leaving their own clan and joining someone else's clan that they are running the raid with. That does not require any sort of skill or knowledge of the raid, beyond the assumed skills and knowledge that are required to go into a raid seal in the first place. Seals need to be an all-encompassing and focused on a specific activity or set of activities in the game. Seals are supposed to be the cherry on top, i.e. only obtained from the X% of the player base that wants to focus their time on acquiring a title. In other words, a Crucible seal should require the completion of the hardest Crucible triumphs, or the Dredgen seal needs to include all the key points of Gambit. So for what reason should raid titles not require a flawless completion? Having a seal should mean that someone has mastered that specific piece of content, i.e. the possession of a seal should equal mastery of that piece of content. I would argue that running a flawless raid means that you and 5 other players know exactly enough to complete a raid without dying. This means no failed mechanics, no enemy killing someone, perfect execution, or if not perfect, good enough to clear every encounter without any death or failed wipe mechanic. Since Bungie is clearly willing to remove the flawless requirement of the Garden Seal an entire season after it has been required for it, then there is a precedent established that Bungie is willing to change old seal requirements. And since for a majority of raid seals there is a flawless requirement for you to obtain the seal, this establishes a precedent to add the requirement of a flawless completion to the Garden and Deep Stone Crypt seals, and all future raid seals. Or, if Bungie truly does not believe that a flawless requirement should be necessary to obtain a raid seal, then those requirements should be removed retroactively from the old raid seals, plain and simple. This last little bit is going to be unscripted. I'm just going to put my thoughts out there. And the first thing I'd like to say is, doing a flawless raid since D1 has always been an achievement considered by Bungie to be pretty special. They even had the achievement on D1 on the Xbox. I remember that because that's where I played it. I assume the PlayStation had a trophy for it, but I cannot say yes or no. I think it's a high probability that they did. And it's always been a core aspect of the raiding in Destiny. I think it's kind of shitty of Bungie to remove the flawless from Garden, and the way they did it, they said that it was a bug an entire season after it was in the title. And it was normal because up until then it was like, okay, we had a triumph in the seal in order to get it, but now maybe we can say that for Garden, when it first came out, the thought process could have been like, okay, well, they streamlined it, they got rid of the triumph, instead they included the shader that you get from going flawless in the collection. But then the season after, they're like, no, that was a bug and unintended. But it's like, from our perspective, that doesn't seem like a bug. That seems like someone told them, like, remove that from the collection. I mean, okay, maybe it wasn't intended, but why is a flawless raid being removed from the raid titles? Like, what design is that? If someone's going for a raid title, they should already understand how to do that raid completely. You already have to do some of the harder challenges. Like, for example, I will never do the Final Encounter Triumph Challenge for Garden, where you have to kill the 20 Vex by deleting the platforms. Again, I hate that. That was miserable. But I would willingly do multiple more flawless runs, because what ends up happening is flawless runs typically run smoother than LFG runs, because everyone in there is fully committed to not dying and playing at their best that they can be. So those typically run smoother, so they're pretty enjoyable, and the challenge is pretty fun. A second thing is, I really don't like this sort of like marketing appeal to the seals. That's what it kind of feels like to me. It's like, oh, buy Europa expansion and you can easily get the Deep Stone Crypt title because you don't have to put that much effort into it. Because let's be honest, the Deep Stone Crypt, it's pretty easy. outside of the day one, like the mechanics themselves, it's pretty easy. Like assuming there's no like power difference with you and the enemies, the mechanics very simple. They literally tell you the mechanics in the game by highlighting things in the game with whatever buff you have. Like you literally have your role assigned to you in the game. It's removed this sort of let's discuss our roles before we go mentality that previous raids had. And one last thing, by Bungie removing these flawless requirements, they're kind of devaluing the titles because it's like personally for my clan, I require that you have a flawless raid, any title or seal, and a flawless completion of Prophecy or Shattered Throne. Or you can come in if you have a Conqueror title or a flawless title from Trials. But I require those things because I want to kind of run a sort of more hardcore clan. But when Bungie removes the flawless requirement from these seals, it devalues those seals relative to the other raid titles. It's like, oh, you have the Deep Stone Crypt seal? That's cool. But I have a real seal that's actually hard to get. It's the one from Last Wish. You have to do a solo. You have to do a flawless, not a solo flawless. Misspoke. But Deep Stone Crypt and Garden seals, whenever I talk to people when I'm raiding from LFGs, you know, I talk to them people about this kind of stuff, and most people don't care about those seals. They're kind of meaningless. And what's the point of a seal? Like the whole point of a seal is to kind of flaunt your stuff. Like what basically by not having these flawless requirements in raid seals is basically saying like, hey, you wouldn't want to flaunt this. It's not impressive. It really isn't. Thanks for watching. I hope you liked the video. If you did, you know what to do. Do all the YouTube stuff. I'm currently at 84 subscribers. I only need 16 more to get up to 100. At 100 subscribers, I'm going to make a short little video about myself. Leave it on my page to introduce people to my channel.